Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating essay that contrasts two dramatically different worlds. On one side, you have the rich, ancient Indian philosophy of liberty, and on the other, the much starker, modern constitutional realities of the Indian state. It's essentially a tale of two clashing frameworks, and honestly, understanding this tension explains so much about modern India. So, what does it actually mean to be free? The essay argues that how you answer this deeply personal question depends entirely on the philosophical lens you're looking through. Like, is freedom just a blank canvas where you have the right to do whatever you want? Or is it something more vividly structured, more purposeful? Let's take a look at the classical answer to that question. To get the classical worldview, we have to start with Purushartha. It comes from Sanskrit words meaning person or soul and purpose, and it forms the entire classical Hindu framework for human life. In this ancient view, liberty isn't just a negative space, just freedom from outside interference. Instead, it's about having the vibrant capacity to achieve the ultimate purpose of being human. It is highly teleological, which is just a fancy way of saying it's oriented towards specific ultimate goals. And what exactly are those goals? Well, there are four aims of human flourishing. First up is dharma, which is the foundational anchor of righteousness and cosmic order. Second is artha, which embraces the green of material prosperity and economic security. And yeah, wealth is actually seen as a necessary positive goal here. Third is kama, the vibrant pursuit of pleasure, desire, and the arts. And crowning the whole shebang is moksha, pure spiritual liberation. The essay points out that this system is deeply hierarchical. Your pursuit of wealth and pleasure has to be guided by the golden thread of your ethical duty, your dharma, which ultimately leads you toward that final spiritual emancipation. You can really see this in this quote from the Bhagavad Gita, which emphasizes swadharma, or one's own duty. In this deeply relational, interwoven universe, freedom isn't about standing all alone in some gray void. It is inextricably embedded in your relationships, your responsibilities, and the cosmic order itself. It's literally the exact opposite of atomistic individualism. You're free not just to do whatever you want, but to become what you are meant to be within your community. Section 1. Enter the modern state. Let's see what happens when this ancient framework collides with the birth of the modern Indian state between 1946 and 1949. The source material points out something fascinating. The Indian Constitution essentially flipped that classical model completely upside down. The modern state prioritizes rights-based individualism. Fundamental rights are strictly enforceable in court. They're there in black and white. But what about that classical duty-based dharma? Well, in the modern constitution, duties are non-justiciable, meaning you can't be taken to court for failing to perform your fundamental duties. The essay argues that this creates a citizen who is a rights-bearer first and a duty-bearer second, which is a total inversion of the Purushartha framework. Section 2. The battle for prosperity. Let's explore how this philosophical shift actually played out in the real world, starting with the economy, or artha. Critics highlighted in the essay argue that ancient texts championed a surprisingly pragmatic mixed economy. Take Kautilya's Arthashastra from the 4th century BCE. It encouraged private enterprise and actually warned against excessive taxation, capping it at a reasonable 1/6 of agricultural produce. But jump to the Nehruvian license Raj from the 1950s to the 1990s, and you see this incredibly heavy-handed central planning. Import tariffs shot up to an eye-watering 300%. I mean, imagine paying 3 times the price of an imported machine just in taxes. And private enterprise, it went from being encouraged to being heavily scrutinized and strictly licensed. Just look at this number, 80. Under the license Raj, businesses sometimes found themselves drowning in an ocean of red tape, needing approvals from up to 80 different government agencies just to produce everyday goods. The author views this as a radical subordination of artha, the individual's pursuit of prosperity, to rigid, stifling state control. The state essentially became a gray roadblock to material flourishing rather than a vibrant facilitator. Section 3. Reforming sacred traditions. The tension between these two worlds becomes remarkably visible when we look at how the modern state approached religion. The text traces a direct historical line here, showing colonial red tape morphing into modern bureaucratic control. Back in 1817, the British introduced regulations to extract revenue from Hindu temples. What's wild and probably surprising to a lot of people is that post-independence, this didn't stop. In 1954, the Supreme Court actually struck down provisions of state control in the landmark Schur-Mutt case, ruling that religious institutions should manage their own affairs. But then in 1959, the state government just passed a new act to bypass the court, cementing intense, ongoing state control over these sacred spaces. 90,700. Wrap your head around that for a second. That is the staggering number of Hindu temples controlled by just 5 southern state governments today. So, rather than being overseen by local spiritual trustees, painted in the vibrant colors of their own community, they're managed by the gray ink of secular government bureaucrats. And the financial scale here is absolutely massive. Tamil Nadu alone manages 43,000 temples. Between 2014 and 2018, they collected over 1,222 crore rupees. The essay emphasizes that these funds are often redirected to non-religious state welfare programs. The argument being made here is that this effectively severs the temple from its classical role. It's no longer allowed to be a holistic, radiant center for community dharma, and is instead treated as just another revenue-generating asset for the secular state. The text notes a deep constitutional contradiction that emerges from this setup. The secular state heavily manages Hindu religious institutions, while minority places of worship, like mosques, churches, and gurudwaras, are generally left to operate freely, managed by their own community boards. The essay suggests this unequal application of secularism disrupts the traditional, organic flow of dharma for the majority community. Section 4. The transformation of marriage. This sweeping modernization didn't stop at temples or the economy. It fundamentally changed deeply personal institutions too. Classically, marriage was a samskara, a spiritually vibrant sacrament oriented toward the ultimate goal of moksha, viewed as eternal and binding. Then came the 1955 Hindu Marriage Act. Now, while acknowledging the very real achievement of ending harmful historical practices, the essay observes a stark philosophical shift here. Marriage was reduced from a colorful spiritual sacrament to a black and white, state-regulated legal contract that could be dissolved by a judge. The state, not the religious community, became the ultimate arbiter of marriage. Section 5, the concept of Swaraj. We see a very similar philosophical displacement in the realm of governance and self-rule. Mahatma Gandhi's classical vision of Gram Swaraj was deeply rooted in traditional concepts. He envisioned lush, decentralized, self-governing village republics where power flowed upward from the grassroots. But the modern reality? It's a totally different picture. Gandhi's vision was ultimately rejected in favor of a highly centralized steel and concrete bureaucratic state. Today, uniform national statutes apply across vastly diverse regions, overriding local context and customs as power aggressively flows from the top down. Section 6, reconciling two visions. So we arrive at the core paradox of the modern Indian state as analyzed by the source material. How do these two wildly different tapestries of human life coexist? Well, spoiler alert, often they don't coexist very smoothly. The state's fundamental paradox is that it tries to weave both traditions into a single flag. It claims to be a liberal democracy based on Western rights, yet constantly borrows the vibrant colors of traditional Indian dharma to legitimize itself. Its goals are purely materialist, like GDP and welfare, lacking that transcendental spiritual horizon of moksha. And importantly, the judiciary acts as the creator of constitutional morality rather than a guardian discovering pre-existing dharma. The essay concludes that when these two worlds inevitably clash, the ancient duty-bound worldview is almost always painted over by Western-style individualism. Which leaves us with a profound, lingering question. Can the modern state protect individual rights in black and white law while also nurturing the rich soil for classical dharma to bloom? Is it actually possible to honor both the modern pursuit of rights and the ancient, spiritually ambitious vision of the Purusharthas? It's a massive challenge that continues to shape the daily reality of over 1 billion people. Think about how these contrasting ideas of liberty color your own life and what it truly means to be free. Thanks for exploring this with me today.